Hello and welcome back to New Talk, the opposite of old talk, right here on Synergy TV. Just before the break, my two colleagues, Lesedi and Kwame, were talking about the recession and the fallout that that's probably going to have on our economy and industries here in Trinidad and Tobago. And as we talk about money, we're bound to talk about crime, but we're also bound to talk about corruption. And it's interesting, in light of the fact that we're talking about an economic state in this country whereby individuals might not be, public servants that is, might not be able to get money that is owed to them by the state. Because if we pay them, we can't run the country. But we obviously know that folks who don't qualify as public citizens by any sleight of hand, right? They're still going to walk away with the money that they're owed. Is that a fair estimate to say that folks, white collar and above, if there's anything above white collar for those folks, right? They still have their bread buttered for years to come. I wonder now, in light of a recession, is there any real thing as a, I know I'm going to sound ridiculous when I say this, but is there any real thing as a recession in a country that is so woefully corrupt that individuals of a particular tax bracket still going to get paid what they paid? We have there's an image that released on social media a couple of days ago of individuals from a contracting company that I obviously should not name, that's still drawing $40,000 and $50,000 salaries after the announcement of a recession. And those salaries aren't going to change, but they laid off hundreds of workers just this week. Is there really such a thing as, are we using the term recession in this country incorrectly when we talk about money? Because individuals who used to getting money will still get money.
Well, I feel as if that's, we're having two slightly different conversations.
Right.
There's income inequality.
Right.
There's income inequality, and there's recession, which is an appraisal of the entire economy as we measure it.
Right.
All right. And yes, income inequality is a very serious thing that we need to face. And yes, there are elites in any society, in this one as well, that are going to be less affected by major economic changes than others. I think that's important to note, obviously, and it's very important to make that distinction. But we're also talking about the general population as well, the elites as they are a minority in numbers,
right.
Not in power, economic, social, or otherwise, but a minority in numbers. So when we're talking about a recession, it is hurting those who are middle class downwards, and right. I feel as if we often refer to our working class selves as middle class. We're not that. Right? There are working class populations, middle class, straight down to the low socioeconomic status that are being hurt, that can be challenged in a serious way by what may be wrought by the economy.
Okay, fair enough. This is, I think, a perfect time to ask what I still think might be a kind of crazy question. Do we think, here at this table, that we were put in this recession situation? That is to say, depending on who you ask, the previous administration dangerously mismanaged this country's funds, which is why we could find ourselves in a situation where we could have easily been identified as being in a recession 2 quarters ago. But someone decided that that was not information that needed to be released to us until after the general election. And interestingly enough, hands changed. Do we think that if the People's Partnership was still in power, we would even be notified that we were in a recession? That's question one.
I think, well, that's the first question.
Yes.
Well, to that question, I don't think so, based on how they operated before. They've always smokes and mirrors. Moody made the announcement earlier, was that earlier this year, that the economy was contracting, and the response of the government was no, they don't know what they're talking about. Come on, That's just a wave of the hand for such a serious conclusion.
Right.
Exactly. So if they had continued, I don't think we would have known about it until people started recognizing, okay, so many people are being laid off from the oil and gas companies, and they're seeing the effect coming down to how much they're able to spend at the end of the month.
Okay. And you go ahead.
Yeah, but when a recession is two sustained quarters of negative economic growth, and when we had already gone through that, there was an express denial that we were in recession by the then Minister of Finance. So,
so actively said we are not in a recession.
Yeah. So I mean, there's, as you said, there's always the issue of smoke and mirrors. But for how long can again businesses and experts in the field look at the trends and look at the numbers and say how many times can you say, well, let me not assume, but there's only so much you can say before it's clear, very clear, that these denials are not reflective on what our real economic situation is.
Right. What I find interesting about the announcement of the recession in this particular space and time is that a lot of us have already started blaming the People's National Movement, the new administration, for mismanagement of funds, the scale of which they were not in government long enough to execute, right? We're talking about, essentially, if we're saying that at some point in time we do not have enough money to run this country, obviously the now Minister of Finance has not been here long enough to screw up that badly. Which begs the question, how badly really was the screw up? Like, what did we do that was so horribly, horribly wrong to find ourselves in the positions that we are in right now?
Well, I'm not sure it's something. There are two things.
It's one singular thing?
Well, there are two things I can identify. I'm not sure. I wouldn't blame the People's Partnership government for the recession. I think that would have had external causes out of our control. But they definitely did not manage it well. First of all, not being honest with the population about it so that people can have an accurate understanding of the situation that we're in is one terrible thing. But then the wanton spending our money outside of the election and then coming into the election, campaign financing, I wonder, which is something I want to bring up as well with the PNM. They said that there are three things that they want to tackle, three things that are at the top of their list. The campaign finance reform, whistleblower legislation, and the property tax, right? And those are very important things, particularly the campaign finance reform and the whistleblower legislation for a country that has a history of corruption. And we've seen it so blatant in the last 5 years, particularly in the last year. So yeah, I'm looking out for that from the current government.
Right, well, it's interesting that well, I don't know how this changes things now, but our current administration said that they wanted to invest in $1 million completion of the Taruba Stadium. We do have money to do that now, obviously. We still have to talk about the Children's Hospital that may or may not be completed. Nobody actually knows anymore. We have $1 million projects that we either want to begin or restore now with no money. But at the same time, this country is not one to necessarily change their promises into more reasonable and sustainable ones. What happens over the next couple of months as far as some of these projects are concerned, do folks think?
I actually don't expect a lot of rollout on these major projects to happen. In, let's say, if you said a 2-quarter, 6-month time scale, I don't expect there to be a lot of rollout there. I expect in January that we'll be hearing. I mean, we've gotten an inkling of what is supposed to happen. I think in January, as has been said before, we'd have a better idea of what are going to be the major public works projects coming in the duration of the administration. In the recent finance hearing, we had the Minister Kwame Weekes speak about plans that they had, that are attached to their own policy, plans that are supposed to be rolled out. But again, the more definite details, I don't think we have those finer details just yet. I think the concern is real. The investment of multi-million-dollar investments into these projects at this time when we're suffering from these economic troubles is something that we should be wary about. But also, the fact it's not going to be a issue of sunk cost either. All right, the fact is that somebody has gone into these things, and the best economic gain we can get from it is having them full and operational. All right, so there's certain things that will have to happen. We can't say that these are the best economic ideas just yet, but we'll see.
Okay, fair enough. Now, regardless of the fact that we have a really bad overall economic situation, folks are really going to be looking at the People's National Movement on whether they manage what funds we have left properly, and if they can at least seem less corrupt than the previous administration seemed. The People's National Movement, depending on who you ask, has not been entirely good with that from the administration before the People's Partnership. Really subjective question. What do folks think about the Honorable Keith Rawlings, Dr. Keith Rawlings' ability to hold the ship straight?
What do I think?
Yeah, these two folks here.
Well, again, we recently wrote an article that people accused us of being partisan.
Tell them the title of the article for folks who might want to read it.
That the 8 o'clock news is near bankruptcy because Keith Rawlings keeps making good decisions.
Is that
no,
genuinely?
We are not being financed by the PNF, just to put that out there. But based on, again, it's subjective, but you see clear differences in how they have been handling the situation. First of all, the honesty with the population, that they've come forward and say, hey, we don't have the money to pay you right now, this is the case. But then decisions, the most significant one to me, the Christmas parties. He said, no, we're not going to have lavish Christmas parties. People are going to have to pay, and no alcohol will be served, you know, at these parties. No state funds will be spent on alcohol. So you see, there's a clear decision and a clear movement towards managing it now. They're not lying to us and saying, okay, nothing is wrong, we'll continue to spend as we have always been spending. No, they are making decisions and letting the country know that this is the reason for it. And I appreciate that.
All right, cool. So we'll be right back after this to take a look, not back, but forward. What do we have to expect out of 2016? And teaser, Donald Trump's name is going to call. Stay tuned. You're watching New Talk, the opposite of old talk, right here on Synergy TV. We'll be back after this.